Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing the NHL playoffs 2015. Right now we're talking with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, successful professional handicapper for almost 30 years. His website, again, OffshoreInsiders.com. Right now we're going to take a look at Minnesota-Chicago. Joe Duffy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Peter Loshak.
All right, Joe, another interesting NHL playoff series. You've given us such great advice, such great insights covering the NFL playoffs for a bunch of years now. Tell us what you do at OffshoreInsiders.com.
OffshoreInsiders.com, pretty much all the North American sports I do pick. And by the way, I have a great outsource for the Triple Crowns coming up. I don't make the picks myself, but I have a fantastic outsource for all three of the Triple Crown races. We pretty much do it all, but baseball and basketball are really at the top of the ledger right now at OffshoreInsiders.com.
Okay, sounds awesome, Joe. Well, Chicago is a minus 129 favorite to win the series at Pinnacle right now. Minnesota plus 115 on the other side. Chicago, of course, does have home ice. And this one, again, maybe I'm a broken record, but I just feel like this one there's no way it's going to go 4 or 5 games. Each of these teams is going to steal 2. Minnesota looking very impressive, and we know that goaltending can play a huge role in the playoffs, even bigger than the regular season, and pretty clearly, at least heading into the series, it seems like Minnesota would have a big edge there. Dubnyk obviously is the reason they're in the playoffs. The second half of the regular season, he came on super strong. He had one hiccup in round 1 of the playoffs, but the rest of the games, he was awesome. And Chicago, they have some issues in goal. It wouldn't be surprising if they solve them and have a great goaltending and get great results from their goaltending in this series. But there's questions. Corey Crawford looking inconsistent, and he is slated to start game 1. I don't know. I think if I had, but then again, Chicago has such experience and depth, and they have just great puck possession numbers. They have everything going for them in terms of their 5-on-5 play. I think my bet would be that this one goes 6 or 7 games, and you pay a big favorite line for that, but I think it's valuable. I think it's worth it. What do you think, Joe?
Chicago certainly doesn't have the depth that they had when they won the 2 Stanley Cups, but with Patrick Kane back in the lineup with him and Jonathan Toews, boy, they certainly have that scoring punch. And remember that, Kane was out of the lineup for a while, so they're definitely a better team than they were during the regular season. But as you said, Dubnyk, he's been tremendous. That's been Minnesota's problem, is they had so many goaltenders in their musical chair over the last couple of years in the playoffs. They're finally settled in goal. And Dubnyk's numbers are impressive. 27-9-2, 1.788 goals against average. And perhaps almost as amazing is that 7 of those losses were by only 1 goal. So Minnesota very strong in goal. This really, truly is, I think, a tough series. I do think there's a lot to be said about being there and having done that, which would favor Chicago. Obviously, the intangibles would favor Chicago, but all in all, I think over the intangibles, I'm going to have to go with the better team in Minnesota.
Really? So you take Minnesota at plus 115, and do you think that maybe taking them, do you think that they're going to go to 7 games and steal the 7th game?
Yeah.
In Chicago,
Yes.
Or do you think that they'll win it in 6 or even 5? How do you see the series playing out?
I do think that they will win Game 7 in Chicago. And again, I don't know if the home ice advantage is going to be quite as huge. Granted, it's very tough to win in Chicago, but the way that Dubnyk has been playing, I do think that Minnesota can certainly steal it. And I know it's putting your neck out on the line, predicting a road team to win it in 7, but I do think Minnesota will win it in 7, possibly 6.
Well, Minnesota is plus 542 to win the series in 7 games. And actually, I'm going to change my my call on this one. I'm not going to call for it to go 6 or 7. I think it's going to go 7 games. And for that, you get an underdog line, right? Minnesota in 7 is plus 542. The Blackhawks in 7 plus 435. And I think both these teams very strong. I think it's a good bet that it goes 7 games, that you like the Wild to win a Game 7 in Chicago more than Chicago to take it.
I do, but I will say this is a perfect example. Remember, I've said in a lot of the videos, one of the reasons I don't like to make the futures bets or even put a lot of money in the series bets is because I don't want to subconsciously be biased making game-to-game adjustments. One of the things to really look for in this series is Chicago's penalty kill. Their special teams was good for most of the year, and then they really struggled towards the end. But if the Blackhawks can turn their penalty kill around, that could make a big difference. And that might be an example where all of a sudden, even if it were tied at 2 games apiece, but Chicago, their special teams were looking tremendous, then there's where maybe I would say forget about what I said at the beginning of the series, and maybe the momentum leads towards Chicago. So never really make such a big bet in a series that it really handcuffs you from making the game-to-game adjustments.
Right. All right. Awesome insights. Joe Duffy. Joe Duffy leaning Minnesota, though. I can't disagree with that. My pick for this series is that it goes 7 games, and you get an underdog line on that one. Thanks so much, Joe.